Fraud alert! Step away from the machine right now. Hank Reddick's voice cracked through the marble lobby like a gunshot, sharp enough to freeze the air. What if this single act was the spark that burned down his power? Darius Cole's fingers hovered above the keypad, his transaction unfinished, as every head within earshot snapped toward him. The neon glow from the ATM screen cast an eerie spotlight on his stunned expression. A woman gasped audibly. Two teenagers near the rope line smirked, whispering as they raised their phones. The accusation wasn't whispered into a corner. It was broadcast like a headline. Hank swaggered closer, radio bouncing at his hip. His palm rested on the ATM, blocking the slot, as if staging a show for the lunchtime crowd. "Caught you in the act," he said, chest puffed. His confidence turned the silence into complicity. Darius's chest tightened. He steadied his leather folio under one arm, willing his breath to stay calm. He could feel his pulse thumping against his collar. This wasn't a private interruption. It was a theater of humiliation. From behind the teller counters, Ari Kaplan peeked over but quickly lowered his gaze. Kayla Monroe angled her phone higher, recording every second, and in that swelling silence the lobby leaned forward, waiting for what Hank would do next. The lobby thickened with bodies as curiosity pulled strangers closer. Conversations faltered and the hum of ATM beeps quieted into a watchful hush. A circle began to form around Darius, his figure suddenly marked as the center of suspicion. Hank held his ground like a stage performer feeding on an audience. "Folks, this is why you have to watch these machines," he announced, making Darius's presence a spectacle. The crowd didn't question him. Instead, heads nodded and murmurs spread, treating the claim as truth. Phones hovered at chest level, angled for steady capture. Kayla Monroe, perched just a few steps away, tightened her grip on her phone, determined not to miss a second. Darius adjusted his stance, shoulders square but jaw tense, each breath deliberate. He fought to hold his silence, knowing every word could be twisted. And yet, the longer he stood surrounded, the more the crowd's judgment grew louder than his unspoken defense. Lydia Chen finally stepped out from behind the counter. Heels clicking against the marble floor, her posture was stiff, eyes darting between Hank and the crowd already circling. She approached with a measured tone, but her voice wavered. "Sir, if you could just step aside so we can verify your transaction." To the crowd, her words weren't neutral. They were confirmation. Whispers tightened into sharp conclusions. "He must have done something." Darius turned toward her, his voice even, his breath tight in his chest. "There's no issue with my card. I'm finishing my withdrawal." But Lydia's gaze slid away, avoiding direct challenge to Hank. "It's just policy," she repeated, her words folding into the silence like an official verdict. Hank crossed his arms, a satisfied smirk tugging at his lips. The guard's confidence swelled while Darius's dignity bent under the weight of public doubt, and the crowd leaned in further. Certain the scene was about to intensify, Hank extended his hand with an open command. "Bank policy requires me to hold this card until it's cleared." His tone rang louder than necessary, feeding the crowd's appetite. Darius's grip tightened on the plastic, knuckles whitening. "That card belongs to me. You've got no right." His words were steady, but beneath them his chest thudded with frustration. Lydia stepped closer, her eyes flicking to the cluster of recording phones. "It might be best, just until we can confirm things." Her voice was almost apologetic, yet it carried the weight of compliance. For a moment, Darius considered refusing outright, but Hank's stance blocked the ATM like a locked gate. The tension was unbearable. Every second stretched as bystanders waited to see if a struggle would erupt. With deliberate calm, Darius released the card into Hank's palm. The guard held it aloft like a prize, flashing it toward the crowd as though validation had been granted. And with that single gesture, the humiliation settled deeper, thickening the silence around him. The lobby's noise collapsed into a strained quiet, pierced only by the faint hum of the ATM machines. Dozens of lenses pointed toward Darius now, glowing red dots and camera shutters catching every angle. It was no longer just an accusation. It was evidence being curated for the world beyond these walls. Ari Kaplan, behind the teller counter, fidgeted with a stack of slips, his eyes locked on the marble floor. He knew what he was witnessing, but chose the safety of silence. Lydia folded her arms, avoiding eye contact, her body language conceding authority to Hank. Kayla zoomed in closer, whispering to someone on her live stream. A ripple of comments scrolled across her screen as strangers outside the lobby judged Darius without hearing his voice. Darius's breathing slowed, measured. He kept still, aware that even a misplaced gesture could be twisted into aggression once replayed online. And in that oppressive quiet, the crowd waited, breathless, to see how far Hank would press his advantage. Hank's voice cut the silence again, this time coated with smug certainty. "We'll be moving this gentleman to the desk for proper verification." He gestured broadly, making sure the crowd absorbed every word. The label of suspect was no longer his alone. It now carried the weight of supposed procedure. Darius straightened his shoulders, his jaw firm, but he did not resist as Hank motioned him away from the ATM. Lydia joined them, clutching a clipboard like a shield. Her tone was measured, but each word sharpened the humiliation. "It's just protocol, Mr. Cole. Please cooperate." The word protocol rippled through the lobby like an official decree. Whispers swelled. He must have been caught doing something. Phones tracked his every step as he was led across the marble toward the customer service desk. Darius clutched his leather folio tighter. He wanted to object, to stop this staged parade, but the collective gaze of strangers turned resistance into risk. Hank walked 2 steps ahead, shoulders squared, a man performing authority for an eager audience. And as they crossed the lobby, the rope-line customers leaned aside, clearing space as though distancing themselves from a contagion. The side office door swung open with a metallic creak, its glass panels reflecting the watchful crowd outside. Hank gestured for Darius to enter, his tone dripping with command. "Inside. We'll handle this properly now." The space was meant for discreet consultations, 2 chairs, a low desk, a muted lamp. But the glass walls turned it into a fishbowl, every movement on display. Customers paused in the lobby to peer through, their reflections overlapping with Darius's own in the pane. The illusion of privacy was shattered. This was humiliation under spotlight. Lydia stood at the threshold, clutching her clipboard. "Please just sit. We'll get this sorted," she said softly. Yet her reluctance betrayed uncertainty. She didn't challenge Hank's authority. Instead, she let the guard dictate tone and pace. Darius lowered himself into the chair, placing his folio carefully on his lap, his breathing measured. He knew any sudden gesture could be misinterpreted. The glass magnified his restraint. The stillness of his body contrasted with Hank's restless swagger as the guard leaned against the doorframe. Through the glass, Kayla's phone hovered, capturing every second. Bystanders whispered like spectators at a staged trial, and with each passing moment, the office walls felt less like protection and more like transparent bars tightening around him. Darius slid his identification across the desk with deliberate calm, his fingers steady despite the thrum in his chest. "My license, my account number, even the receipts from this morning. That should be enough." His voice was even, his composure carefully intact. Hank barely glanced at the documents before pushing them back with 2 fingers. "Not sufficient," he declared, his words blunt and absolute. His smirk dared Darius to argue. Lydia leaned closer, scanning the paperwork, but her fear of being seen as careless kept her silent. "We'll need more." "Confirmation," she murmured, choosing safety over truth. The phrase echoed like an official seal. Darius inhaled through his nose, fighting the tightening in his throat. "What else would you need?" "Everything matches." "This is my account." He placed his debit slip down, but Hank waved it off as though it were counterfeit. Each offering was dismissed, not on merit, but on convenience. Options narrowed with every exchange, the guard feeding on the imbalance. Lydia's refusal to override him was another wall closing in. From beyond the glass, a boy pointed toward the office, whispering to his mother. "They caught him." The phrase landed heavier than any policy, and seated in that transparent cell, Darius realized the system wasn't designed to hear him. It was designed to strip him of voice. Outside the glass office, Kayla Monroe tilted her phone, lips moving as she narrated in hushed tones. "Guy tried to scam the ATM. They're checking him now." Her livestream comments scrolled rapidly, strangers forming verdicts with nothing but a shaky feed and Hank's loud accusations. Within minutes, the clip had been shared, cropped, and reposted. Viewers speculated, embellishing details. He was caught with fake cards. Police are on their way. The story bloomed online faster than any attempt Darius could make to defend himself. Inside the office, Darius sat stiffly, eyes flicking toward the reflection of Kayla's phone in the glass. The humiliation pressed tighter, no longer confined to the marble lobby. He could feel his reputation leaking into the digital world, where the crowd was endless and unforgiving. Hank, enjoying the shadow play, leaned against the doorframe. "Whole city's gonna know we stopped a fraudster," he muttered loudly enough for those outside to hear. Lydia shifted uneasily, but again said nothing. Every second of her silence became part of the performance. Darius clasped his hands on his folio, fingers trembling despite his still posture. He knew the damage was spreading beyond the room, turning whispers into viral certainty, and as the crowd refreshed their screens, their eyes on him burned hotter than the glare of the lobby lights. The revolving doors spun open, letting in a gust of crisp autumn air, along with a man in a tailored navy suit. Owen Pritchard, the bank's regional marketing representative, strode in with a purposeful gait. He carried a leather briefcase and a schedule sheet, his focus fixed on preparations for the upcoming finance forum. The tense hush of the lobby slowed his pace. He noticed the circle of customers, the cluster of raised phones, and the glass office where Hank stood guard. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice projecting authority but carrying curiosity rather than concern. Hank straightened, seizing the chance to justify himself. "Caught him at the ATM fraud attempt. We're running checks." His tone rang with pride, as if reporting a successful catch. Owen's brow furrowed, but he accepted the statement without question, interpreting it as part of standard security diligence. Lydia nodded faintly behind the glass, reinforcing the narrative with her silence. From his chair, Darius watched Owen's arrival with sharp restraint. He recognized the representative, knew his role, but revealing too much now would sound defensive, perhaps even desperate. The timing twisted the knife, his silence protected him. But it also deepened his invisibility. And as Owen turned back toward the event posters on the wall, Darius felt the chasm widen between truth and perception. Hank's radio crackled against his shoulder as he pressed the call button with a flourish, loud enough for the lobby to hear. "Yeah, we've got a fraud case here. Need outside assistance." The words hung in the air like a gavel strike, final and heavy. A ripple of murmurs surged through the bystanders. Police? Must be serious. Phones angled higher, some capturing Hank mid-call, others focusing on Darius sitting silently in the glass office. The narrative was being cemented, each recording another brick in the wall of humiliation. Lydia's lips parted, as if she might object, but fear of undermining her guard kept her quiet. She busied herself with her clipboard, avoiding Darius's steady gaze. Inside, Darius's chest felt tight, each breath shallow. The thought of police intervention shifted the stakes from embarrassment to danger. He tapped his fingers lightly against the folio on his lap, grounding himself in rhythm, refusing to show fear. Yet the thought of handcuffs in front of this crowd clawed at him. Owen Pritchard lingered near the posters, uneasy now, but Hank's confidence made the story sound airtight. The guard strutted back to the glass door, announcing for all to hear. "Authorities are on their way, no use resisting." And with those words, the lobby's silence turned into anticipation, every eye waiting for the arrival that would decide Darius's fate. The double glass doors parted with a mechanical hiss, and two uniformed officers entered, their dark jackets sharp against the marble brightness. The sound of their boots echoed across the lobby, each step drawing a heavier silence. Bystanders shuffled back, widening the circle as if making space for judgment to descend. Hank straightened instantly, puffing out his chest as though summoning reinforcements for a victory lap. "Right here," he called, gesturing toward the glass office. His tone carried the finality of someone certain the story was already written. Inside, Darius did not move. His hands rested on his folio, his eyes locked on the officers who now approached with measured suspicion. They didn't ask questions of Hank or Lydia first. Their gaze went straight to the seated man framed like a defendant in a transparent cell. Kayla's phone tracked their entrance, capturing the intensity of the moment. The Livestream chat exploded, police on scene now. "Fraudster's done for. The crowd's silence outside was matched by the noise online, a dual chorus shaping perception. Lydia hovered near the door, her pulse visible in her throat, but she made no move to intervene. The officers' expressions hardened as they closed the distance, one unclipping a notepad, the other resting a hand near his belt. And in that thick, suffocating quiet, the weight of authority shifted entirely onto Darius, as if the entire lobby braced for his fall. Hank rapped on the glass with the back of his knuckles, loud enough to jolt every bystander's attention. "Hand me the card again," he ordered, his voice brimming with authority borrowed from the officers now standing nearby. His smirk widened, certain he had the backing to force compliance. Darius didn't move. His hand stayed folded over his folio, his breath steady but his chest tight with defiance pressing against restraint. "You already have the proof you need," he said quietly, each word controlled. The silence that followed was sharper than any shout. The officer's eyes narrowed, waiting. Hank pushed harder, opening the door half an inch. "You don't cooperate. You make this worse on yourself." His voice carried through the lobby, thick with threat. Whispers rippled across the crowd. Phones rose higher. Even those who had hesitated earlier now leaned forward, captivated by the prospect of escalation. Darius lifted his chin, refusing to shrink beneath Hank's command. For the first time, his stillness wasn't submission. It was resistance. His silence became a stand, his posture an unspoken declaration. The tension stretched taut, every heartbeat magnified in the marble echo of the room, until it felt like one wrong gesture could split the air wide open. And in that frozen instant, the lobby seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something irreversible to snap. The tension shattered not with a shout, but with a sudden electronic chime. The lobby's digital signage flickered, shifting from rotating promotions to the bank's upcoming event announcement. Bold letters slid across the screen. Fall Finance Forum. Keynote speaker, Dr. Darius Cole, celebrated economist. The crowd froze. Gasps cut through the silence like cracks in glass. Phones swung from Hank to the towering screen, capturing the name and photograph beaming above the marble. The man they had just labeled a criminal was smiling down at them in crisp, professional portraiture. Owen Pritchard, who had been scanning the posters earlier, stiffened in recognition. He stepped forward, his briefcase nearly slipping from his hand. "Wait," he said, his voice slicing into the thick air. "That's him." His finger pointed directly to the display, then back at Darius. "That's Dr. Cole." Hank blinked, thrown off balance for the first time, his hand still gripping the glass doorframe. "What are you talking about?" He barked, but his voice cracked under the weight of disbelief. All at once, the narrative collapsed. The whispers shifted into shocked murmurs. The keynote speaker. The economist? The same bystanders who had muttered fraudster now widened their eyes, uncertain where to stand. Inside the glass office, Darius remained composed. Though his chest rose with the release of tension he had swallowed for too long, he didn't need to speak. The revelation spoke louder than any defense could. Kayla's Livestream chat erupted in capital letters. "He's the speaker?" Bank just humiliated their own guest. The comments surged faster than her phone could refresh, and in the center of it all, Hank's confident posture faltered, his certainty draining as every lens turned back toward him. Owen Pritchard moved quickly now, stepping between Hank and the glass office. His voice carried with authority that cut straight through the crowd's murmurs. "Dr. Cole, forgive this outrage. You're our keynote speaker for the Finance Forum. We are honored to host you here." The title landed like a gavel. Phones zoomed in, capturing every syllable. The shift was instant. Where suspicion had filled the air, now awe rippled through the lobby. Hank's mouth hung open, his grip on the doorframe loosening. You can't be serious," he stammered. But the photographs on the wall and the name on the digital signage confirmed what his words tried to deny. Lydia's face blanched. Her clipboard trembled in her hand as she stepped back, realizing her silence had aligned her with humiliation rather than truth. "Dr. Cole," she murmured, her tone suddenly deferential. We didn't realize." Darius finally rose from his chair, adjusting his jacket with measured grace. He looked directly at Hank, his eyes steady. The restraint he had carried all along became a silent indictment, more powerful than any outburst. Owen gestured toward the officers, who hesitated, then stepped aside, understanding now they had been summoned under false pretenses. "This man is not a suspect," Owen declared. "He is a distinguished guest of this bank." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, phones capturing the dramatic reversal. Kayla's livestream exploded with new comments. Instant karma. Guard just destroyed himself. Hank's smirk had vanished entirely, replaced by a pale, tightening jaw. The stage he had built for public humiliation had inverted, leaving him trapped in the glare of every eye. And as Darius stood tall before him, the balance of power tipped irrevocably, leaving Hank with nowhere to hide. The silence broke with Owen's firm command. "Remove him from duty. Immediately." His words carried the full weight of authority, leaving no room for hesitation. Two senior staff members hurried forward, their faces tight with embarrassment. They positioned themselves beside Hank, who stiffened in disbelief. "Wait, you can't just—" His protest crumbled under the stares of the crowd and the glow of dozens of phones. Lydia finally found her voice, though it quivered. "Mr. Reddick, please surrender your post. You've violated protocol and embarrassed this institution." She avoided Darius's gaze. Her tone clipped, as if reciting from a script to salvage what could be salvaged. Hank's radio was unclipped. His badge lifted from his chest with a swift tug. His hands twitched at his sides, torn between rage and the realization that resistance would be broadcast live to thousands. The crowd murmured, some gasping, others whispering words like karma and deserved. Kayla's phone zoomed in, catching Hank's once confident stride dissolve into a stiff shuffle as he was escorted toward the exit. Through the glass doors, his figure grew smaller until the lobby itself seemed to exhale. The spectacle was over, but the weight of its memory lingered in the polished marble and in every clip already spreading online. And at the center of it all, Darius remained still, the man once accused now unshaken, watching the guard vanish into the very silence he had created. Within minutes, the bank's branch director emerged from a back office, her expression grim. She carried a printed statement already half-drafted, the urgency visible in the hurried ink. Standing before the hushed lobby, she addressed both the crowd and the countless phones still recording. "Today's incident does not reflect the values of Riverside Bank and Trust," she began, her voice steady but weighted with shame. "Effective immediately. Our security protocols are under review. The actions taken against Dr. Cole were unacceptable. We will be implementing new anti-bias training and accountability measures across all branches." The crowd shifted uneasily, whispers rising, their admitting fault. The director's eyes flicked briefly toward Darius, then back to the audience, her words carefully chosen to balance apology with damage control. Owen stood beside her, reinforcing the message. "We value Dr. Cole not only as a guest, but as a leader in his field. His treatment today was indefensible, and we will ensure this institution learns from it." Phones captured every word, ensuring the bank's public commitment would spread as widely as the humiliation had. Lydia remained silent near the side, her lowered gaze proof of complicity now etched into memory. Darius listened, expression measured. The apology was public, but he knew true change would depend on what happened beyond this moment, and in the crowd's silence, the weight of responsibility hung, daring the bank to prove its words were more than damage control. Darius stepped forward at last, his presence commanding the same lobby where his dignity had been stripped moments earlier. Phone swiveled to him instinctively, waiting for words that would outlast the chaos. He adjusted his jacket, his voice calm but resonant. "What happened here today wasn't just about me," he began, scanning the faces around him. "It was about how quickly suspicion can replace respect when bias takes the lead. A uniform, a title, or a crowd doesn't make judgment true. It only makes it louder." His gaze lingered on the glass office where he had been displayed. "I was accused, dismissed, and nearly criminalized in front of you. Not because of evidence, but because of assumption. And every silence in this room allowed it to grow." Murmurs stirred, some heads bowing slightly. Even the officers shifted uncomfortably, realizing their role in the silent endorsement. Darius's tone sharpened, though he never raised his voice. "But let this moment live longer than the humiliation. Let it remind us that institutions must not only correct their errors after the fact, they must prevent them. It takes courage to question authority, to speak against unfairness. Silence is not neutral. Silence is a choice. Kayla's phone shook in her hands, her live stream chat erupting with lines of support and shame intermingled. The message was already echoing beyond the marble walls. Darius closed with a steady breath. If this moment has meaning, carry it forward. Share it, talk about it, and never let someone's dignity be stripped without your voice beside them. Because justice doesn't grow in silence, it grows when people choose to stand. And with those words, the crowd felt the weight shift once more, leaving them not only witnesses but participants in what came next.